I'm a long-time listener and a grateful fan, a father of 2 boys, a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. Your podcast has been life-changing for me. I tell everyone I can about it. Before discovering your show, I struggled deeply to connect with my first son. We are both orchids. I wanted to love him, but I had resentment for his big outbursts and feelings. My partner, a clinical psychologist, did everything she could to help, but I remained emotionally distant, perhaps in fear of my own big feelings. It was painful for both of us. She carried the brunt of parenting while also worrying about me. Resentment set in deep. I was lost. Then I listened to one of your episodes and something shifted. My resentment began to fade, making space for connection, acceptance and love. That single moment changed the course of my relationship with my son and partner as well. I truly don't know where our family would be without your work. I shudder to think of the strain my partner and children might have endured had I not stumbled across your podcast. This is my first time writing in. Your recent episode resonated deeply with me, but also stirred long buried fears. When I was 10, during a school camp, I watched other boys kiss their girlfriends and felt I was expected to do the same. Boyfriend duties at the time would maybe include holding hands, but likely just writing notes in class. This was a step up. I was nervous. I hesitated, but leaned in to kiss my girlfriend on the neck. She recalled and ran. I was confused, ashamed and hurt until the next day when the teacher pulled me aside. I was accused of something I didn't understand. The word rape was mentioned, a word that I had never heard before. I was terrified. For hours I thought I would be sent home. I was told that perhaps my parents would need to be called, perhaps the police too. Terror was in my body. Though I was ultimately allowed to stay, I suppose the truth came out. Several girls stalked me and called me a rapist for the rest of the day. On the first day back at school and on my way home, my father approached me. Her father approached me, hoisted me by the throat and threatened me with violent, graphic assault if I even looked at my daughter again.
Even looked at his daughter,
sorry. Spent the rest of the year in hiding, sitting in the furthest corner of every classroom, running out the moment the bell rang, trying to disappear. That experience never fully left me. Even now as a father, I carry that. At the playground with my sons, I worry about looking at my child for too long, afraid that others might assume the worst. I worry about the length of firmness of a handshake or an embrace with a client, colleague, female relative or friend. I feel constant nagging fear of being misjudged, of being seen as something I am not, a weight of guilt for the sins of other men who have wronged and terrified our girls and women. I'm a man just as those perpetrators are. I'm in that group. I'm constantly walking a razor wire, wobbling above the abyss. And now I wonder, will my boys carry this burden too? Will they grow up under the weight of assumed guilt and complicity? If I raise them to treat girls and women right, will they still be taught to see themselves as threats, as guilty for the mistreatment of women by virtue of their gender? How do we raise them to be supportive, kind, respectful and aware without making them feel inherently culpable for things they haven't done? How do I protect them from the burden I carry? The statistic that 1 in 3 women experience some form of sexual abuse is horrifying, and I want change too. I wholeheartedly support the fight against sexual violence. I'm a supporter of equal rights. I want to be egalitarian. I want an egalitarian society where women feel safe, in control and free. But at times the rhetoric from feminists and those talking about patriarchy and toxic masculinity feels like a form of original sin, a religion where boys must atone for the sins of the patriarchy, rapists, misogynists. I don't want this heavy burden for my sons, but how do we ensure that in striving for positive change, we don't place a heavy burden on the next generation of boys, one that strips them of their innocence, burdens them with the guilt they do not deserve? Thank you for reading. Thank you truly for your work. It's already transformed my life. A fellow orchid.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. How'd you feel reading?
God, that's complex. Like that feels like a heavy burden for that parent. And they're thinking a lot about this.
Yeah, decades later.
Decades
worried
on.
about looking at kids for too long, too firm a handshake. Like
never
that's trauma.
worried about that. I've never worried about that.
Yeah, he's carrying trauma.
Oh, mate.
And it's, yeah, and there's so many men out there that hurt that like we push back on them help seeking or needing support. And, you know, once again, that's because of patriarchy. But yeah, and like I've had experiences of that. I've had, as you know, like someone harass me and being told that, you know, because I'm a guy, I should just be able to suck it up and not need support. And it's yeah, it's awful. I think I 100% agree. Like our boys are not born destined to be like this. And we need to hold the responsibility to where those that deserve to be accountable for it. I was at a talk at a rural school last week.
Yep.
And I was waiting back to talk to people, which is amazing. I think it's a huge privilege. I know you do too, when people wait back to say hi.
Love having a chat.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I did this rural talk, and there was a woman waiting up the back with her kids. And she was the last one because she was just sitting down. And when everyone left and the principal and the vice principal were still waiting for me to finish, this mum came up with her two daughters. And her two daughters gave me these beautiful drawings that they made. And I took them home and gave them to Evie the next morning. I got home at like midnight. But it was really amazing. She's like, I've never shared this with anyone, but I just sat through your talk. And she talked about the awful violence. She'd had people close to her murdered in front of her, like really abusive partner. And she had this, you know, two things that were really powerful about that conversation. She said, like, I worry that I see her father in her oldest kid who was in mid-primary school. It's a beautiful kid. And she's like, it's triggering me. And being aware of that is phenomenal, but we've got to realise, like, this dad, he's being treated awfully about that. That dad that came and grabbed him by the throat, you know, that needs to be more accountable for the fact that he's tried to kiss a girl's neck. Do you know what I mean? That's an adult being abusive to a kid. And we need to challenge this idea that kind of men are born to be like this. The other thing that mum shared with me that was amazing, and I'm just going to try and think how I can use it better. She was at work and her person that she got an IVO found her and was outside, and a male staff member realised what was happening and came up and, you know, said, I'm here, you know, like, what can we do to help? All this beautiful stuff around her. And she's like, look, I know it's not his fault. He was severely abused as a boy. He's just got multi-generational trauma, and that's why he's acting like this way. And the nurse looked at her, male nurse, and he said, yeah. He's like, it's not his fault he's the way that he is, but it is his responsibility. And it's a really interesting thing to think about, but it's a collective responsibility that we have around all the kids that have experienced trauma, like this dad, to take responsibility for how we've harmed him and all these other kids, including boys and girls, and think about how do we heal them? How do we take responsibility for it and change? And think about, last bit of this rant, think about the people that are in power at the moment.
Yep.
It's unhealthy, aggressive, I'll take all power, and we're idolising them, and we shouldn't be. We should be realising that they're hoarding resources, they're making our communities unhealthy, and they need to be accountable for that because it's their responsibility to do better in leadership roles.
This podcast is brought to you by Guiding Growing Minds, a social enterprise that aims to give all children the best opportunity to reach their potential and succeed in living rich and meaningful lives.